How many discounts does USAA Auto Insurance offer? Too many to say here. Multi-vehicle discount, safe driver discount, new vehicle discount, storage discount, legacy.
How many discounts will you stack up? Visit USAA.com/auto discounts. Restrictions apply.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that have gone under the radar, are underappreciated, or have passed most people by. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and today we're going to be talking about the medieval fantasy adventure film Ladyhawke, directed by Richard Donner, starring Matthew Broderick, Rutger Hauer, and Michelle Pfeiffer. Joining me today to talk about this is the writer-director of the new TV show, which just premiered on Tubi yesterday, Sarah Jefferson Carter. How's it going, Sarah?
I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. I'm excited to be talking about this one with you because we met at WonderCon. We talked a little bit about some stuff afterward and about how much you love fantasy and your fantasy influences and how your show has been influenced by some of the 80s fantasy that you loved. And I was like, I've always kind of wanted to watch this movie Ladyhawke. Do you like that one? And you were very excited to talk about it. Before we get into the Ladyhawke, what did you want to let the people know about Queendom Come?
Yes, so Queendom Come is out now. June 1st was the drop date, and we're just excited. I mean, this is a independently made fantasy show, and it's going to be on Tubi. We're so excited we got picked up. I mean, we're just over the moon, and we just want everybody who loves fantasy, who's a fantasy nerd like myself, to come and watch it.
Yeah, it's really good stuff, and I'm very excited. It'll be, like we said, it'll be out by the time this episode is out. Not as we're recording it, so that's the magic of podcasting is the future. You guys will have been able to see it. But yeah, definitely go and check that out. Very, very excited for that. But yeah, I obviously, if you're listening to an episode here about Ladyhawke, chances are that you love some good fantasy. You, like I said, you were very excited to talk about Ladyhawke with me. We talked about some other kind of classic 80s fantasy stuff like this when we were having our conversation. But what do you love about Ladyhawke?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I was trying to remember as I was rewatching it. I mean, I've seen it so many times throughout the years. I was trying to remember the first time that I watched it, and it had to be with my mom. My mom absolutely loves this movie, and I remembered parts of it. It's actually very fascinating because I remembered parts of it, and other things that I remembered weren't actually there. And so as I was rewatching it, I was discovering that I had filled in blanks, like those like the Mad Libs, like where I was just like, oh, Matthew Broderick's character was a monk, and I'm like rewatching, I'm like, oh no, he's just a thief, like he's just like. And so I think that's what I love about it is in the 80s, you start to get a lot of fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. Like before that, it's like, it's fantasy, but it's like Camelot and the Knights of the Round Table and all that, which is great. But this is something very refreshing because it was something very different. I think that the writer had said that he'd come up with it, or was it Richard Donner who wrote it? I couldn't remember.
I think it was Donner talking about the initial idea he had for it.
Yeah. And so I think that like just this not IP driven independent narrative just felt really cool to me. And even though back then, obviously, it was just normal to have new stuff coming out, unlike now.
What a novel!
It's crazy. But I think that what I love about the fantasy back then, particularly Ladyhawke, is that it's just the most basic storytelling. I think when you think about fantasy, and especially now the shows and stuff we have, it's like Succession, and we got to go in depth and all the way. We're gonna know this character's ins and outs, and we're gonna know their motivation. We're gonna know all the things. I rewatching this, I was like, I don't know almost anything about any of these people except what is surrounding the story that they are trying to tell. And something like that is just, it's light, it's fun, it's contained, it's something you can come into and enjoy and then leave. And I think that is like that's entertainment at its best for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you bring up some really good points about this movie feeling different than a lot of the stuff we get today, you know, with all of our kind of quote unquote fantasy epics. With this one especially being a low fantasy, you know, this is not like a Lord of the Rings thing. This is a world where there is like magic, but it's very simple. Like the magic is just there so you can have this premise, which we haven't touched on, by the way. And I love the premise for this movie. And as the title suggests, this is there's a curse on this pair of lovers, which you're kind of introduced to through the Matthew Broderick character, who's nicknamed the Mouse. He's kind of this little thief's like guy. He's almost like a proto Ferris Bueller, because this like comes out like it's like if Ferris Bueller was in the Middle Ages, because it comes out a year before Ferris Bueller. He even has like the same asides that he does in Ferris Bueller, but in this, like he's talking to God. He's like, "Well, God, let me tell you, I'll never steal it." You know, it's like okay, they were really cooking. They knew how to use him. But you're introduced to the plot through this character who's not the protagonist. He's the main character, but he's not, you know, he's not the driving force. He does still have growth and everything. But yes. You start with him. He escapes this dungeon, you know, this prison, and ends up meeting this knight, and you know, this knight that has a hawk with him. And you know, you're kind of like, what's going on with this guy? You know, he seems to have had some relationship with these guards, the same guards that are chasing the Mouse and trying to take him back to prison. And then you slowly learn alongside him, Matthew Broderick, what is the deal with this guy and his hawk, because he kind of disappears in the night, and then this lady shows up and the hawk is gone, and then there's a wolf. So you're kind of like, hold on a second, I think I know where this is going. And yeah, the premise is that there are these two lovers. There's this evil bishop who you see from the beginning, who is pursuing all of these characters independently, and then they all kind of, you know, team up. And he has cursed them. Essentially, this bishop has made a deal with the devil so that these lovers, who are played by Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer, just some real 80s talent in this movie, by the way.
Right?
But during the day, Rutger Hauer is, you know, in his regular human form, but at night he transforms into a wolf. And at night, Michelle Pfeiffer is cursed to be a hawk. During the day, Michelle Pfeiffer is cursed to be a hawk, and at night is when she can only be her true self. So they are never able to be together, you know, other than maybe a glimpse or two at dawn, like fleeting milliseconds.
Do they say always together, never apart, or something like that?
Yeah,
I think
like exactly. Something, I think always together, never separate. Like, yeah, it's something like that. And it's just such a cool, like, low fantasy premise. And you know, over the course of the movie, they're kind of on this quest. They go on all these different adventures. They're kind of constantly dodging all these threats from all the different castle guards, and then Alfred Molina shows up as this real grungy trapper dude, like some 80s Alfred Molina. You're like fresh off of Indiana Jones. Like he shows up, you're like, oh, this is great. And it kind of culminates all in this incredible finale where Rutger Hauer has to like go to the church, and they're able to break in because they're like, okay, well, Matthew Broderick, he broke out, he knows how to get back in. That's kind of why Rutger Hauer finds him in the first place, because he's like, you're the only person to ever break out of this you know, prison, so you can get back in. So he's like, I'm going to kill the bishop. But they find this whole other priest character who's like, actually, there's going to be a day where day is night and night is day, and a day without night and a night without day, I think is how he puts it.
Yeah.
And then you have to confront him together. You'll both be in your human form, and that'll break the curse. So you can't kill him. And Rutger Hauer is just like, nah, fuck that. I'm going to murk this guy. He sucks. But it leads to this great finale where Rutger Hauer is just like one by one taking out the castle guards, and just like there's the one, his kind of replacement, the captain of the guard, who he's like has this crazy sword fight with, and it culminates in this great finale where you're like, oh, night is day is night. What does that mean? It means a solar eclipse is happening.
Yeah,
and that is such an incredible scene when that's happening, because the sword fight's going down, and there's a moment when, you know, because of a bunch of plot machinations, you think, oh, like, I mean, you know it's not, because, you know, we've seen movies before, but like Rutger Hauer is like, okay, Michelle Pfeiffer's dead.
Yeah.
I think is it Isabel? What's her name?
Isabeau.
Isabeau, thank you.
Yeah.
She's like, she's dead, and he's like about to kill the guy anyway. And you see it's just in such a like chef's kiss like shot. There's like, you see a figure behind, kind of draped in a purple thing, but she's out of focus. She's just over his shoulder, but you know that's her, right? And he's about to kill the bishop, and then you hear her talk, and it's the first time in the whole movie, other than like a second, where there's really that they are able to like see each other as humans, and their reunion is so cool. So I really love the finale. I really loved all that stuff. What did you think about the whole kind of unique premise of this movie?
I mean, I absolutely love it, because I think it's fascinating the way that, and I think I'm honestly, from a writer's perspective, I was thinking how challenging it is to portray a love story where the lovers can never be together on screen, right? So I think it's just this idea that they can never be together, to show their longing, to show them not really being able to even live a normal life or any resemblance of a normal life. I think it's just a really beautiful and tragic thing. And then, like you said, you have Matthew Broderick's character, the mouse, just being this, like, I swear I thought he was going to break the fourth wall. I was waiting for him to just turn to the screen and like talk to us, or even just give a look. And I was like, well, this is a year or two before.
It's a year, yeah.
So before Ferris Bueller. So it's just like, I love that he's like this catalyst, and we actually start the movie we start the movie with the hawk, right? But we don't really know exactly what that stands for, what it means. And then to have it really start with, oh my God, what was his name? I keep thinking, because I know that Matthew Broderick's name, his last name in the movie is Gaston, and I can never remember Philippe Gaston. And I always think about Beauty and the Beast, but they start with Philippe Gaston breaking out of this dungeon. And I'm just like, well, but as I was remembering it, I was like, well, I remember the story to be a love story, right? Like, this is a romance, but he's the catalyst to that love story. Like, the story doesn't happen without him. And so I really just I always enjoy magic. So I always enjoy, a horrible bishop. I always enjoy,
very Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Right? It's just very, and I like, just to have this love story, and then to have this comedic relief in Matthew Broderick's character, and then to have this evil guy, which I mean, from what I gather of the story, he just wanted Isabeau. Like, he just wanted to be with her, which I was just like, could you be with her back? Like, could you even have, like, it was a Frollo, like, she will be mine kind of situation. And so I think that for me, really, the way that the love story plays out, and then the way that they have this, I mean, obviously this Renaissance-y, like, knights, situation is always fun, but I mean, I'm always in love with people turning into animals. I think it was like the biggest thing that I wanted to do when I was a kid.
Shout out to Animorphs.
Like, I was just like, I want to be able to turn into a hawk. I mean, obviously not to forsake my love. But I think it's a really interesting I think it's a really interesting story, and I think that it's a really good use of magic in a story. It's not just like, oh, well, they have magical powers. Don't get me wrong. I love when people have magical powers for no reason. But I think that this is like a magical situation that these people were brought into, and now they're trying to figure out how to escape it. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful, fun, it feels like a fairy tale, right? Like it feels
Mhm.
like something that I could see in like a Disney movie, honestly, back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love once again that it was, you're getting this from kind of Philippe's perspective. Because like you said, you started out, you're like, oh, is this a love story? Like, because I think if it's from like Rutger Hauer's point of view,
Mhm.
like he's the like kind of driving, like it starts with him and stuff like that. I think it's a much more traditional by the numbers movie
Mhm.
where it's like, okay, because we're learning about like the way you find out about this is so much more organic because
Yes.
he's kind of discovering it. He meets the priest who kind of tells him these stories, and Rutger Hauer is kind of like this stoic knight. You're like, what's this guy's deal? And you're eventually like, I love a story where it's like, like The Great Gatsby or something, where
Mhm.
it's not like the main guy, like The Great Gatsby is not told from Gatsby's point of view. It's told from
Yeah.
Nick's point of view. I not enough movies and books and shows I feel like do that where they like take this, they're like, okay, yeah, here's the main guy, but like it's not really about him. He's just kind of there to like help out the plot, grow and develop, but like really he's looking at this love story. And I think because of that, like because he's looking at this love story in the same way that you are like much more invested in it, and it's that much easier. And this movie, I think, overall does a lot of things that are really different, definitely for the time, but especially
Yes.
now. Like I look at a movie like this, and there's some stuff that's like a little dated. Like this is like not a huge budget movie, even
Mhm.
for the time. So there's like a couple things where like, okay, they have to like turn into the animals and stuff like that, and they do some very 80s stuff, but like it's
Yes.
kind of charming, and it's
Yes.
also just like watching. I was like, man, like they used to just go to Europe and just shoot movies in castles, like
Right?
that, like that is incredible. Like there's maybe like one like or two like shots that are rear projection, but for the most part they were just like shooting this movie in
Yes.
places, like, and that is something, with a lot of especially fantasy stuff that we're seeing less and less and less of. Now it's like you're gonna shoot something on the volume, or you can, and like you can do cool stuff with that, but it's also just like, wow, they really took the extra effort to make this movie look good and to have a last huge fight scene in a medieval church.
Yes. Well, I think it's so incredible because I think one of the things that Hollywood tends to miss out on now is that one really big portion of fantasy is travel.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a low fantasy or an epic fantasy, somebody has to travel. People have to go
Mm.
from point A to point B, and we wanna watch them do that. We wanna see them go through the perils of traveling, and so I think when I think about Lord of the Rings, right? They shot what, every place in New Zealand,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
just
exactly.
up and down every mountain,
Mhm.
like helicoptering people in.
Yes.
But and here too, right? You get that sense of breadth and space that they don't have to tell you about the world. They're showing you the world. They're showing you the people. I mean, that first scene where Michelle Pfeiffer goes from being a hawk to being a woman, and Matthew Broderick's like, "What is going on?" And
Yeah.
I don't. This woman is walking with a wolf that just killed a man. Like, I can't. I don't want to like. But that idea that this couple is like scared of these people and then tries to take their life, I find it like it is the epitome of showing and not telling. In fact, we don't even get to know that what actually has happened and transpired to make this the situation, and that this is actually happening. Like Matthew Broderick's character Philippe does not get the actual story until 50 minutes
Yeah.
into the movie. And I think that that is just them saying, "Hey, come in this world, live in this world, with Philippe Gaston for a minute, experience this world with him." and then we'll let you in on some things. And I think that just gives it this, without it even feeling too long like some movies do now, it just gives this breadth and this life and this pacing to the story that is just really necessary. And that is the movement in shooting on location as opposed to shooting on a soundstage or, shooting with a giant screen behind you. Right. And I think that you can feel that from the characters. I think it's just, it's really beautiful.
Yeah. If for somebody who goes into this movie, they don't know the premise already or whatever, like it does, like you said, a lot of that showing, not telling, in really smart ways. Like they don't reveal like the whole plot of what happened to these people until, you said, like almost an hour in. And one of my favorite moments of that showing, not telling is, and you already kind of have picked up on enough clues to get that, Michelle Pfeiffer turns into a hockey arena. You get that. But the way it's like kind of really confirmed, and that Matthew Broderick finally is like, okay, I'll talk about this and address it, is the scene when she's like recovering in that castle or whatever, where the priest lives, and you have the hawk, and the hawk is wrapped up in the little bundle of cloth, and the hawk has like the arrow sticking out of it, and Matthew Broderick kind of goes out for a second, and then he comes back in, and then there's Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's got an arrow in her, and you're like, okay, if you guys didn't get it by now, here we go. And he's like, oh, there was a hawk here, but you knew that. Like, nobody is like, wow, you turned into a hawk. Like, it's just like, no, it's using film as a medium. It's doing exactly what it should. And yeah, I really, really appreciated that. It works within its limitations, and it does really smart visual storytelling throughout the film. I remember, like, one of my favorite moments is, when they're having that crazy battle in the church. And, you like, if you've seen the movies, you understand, like, okay, when they make a reference to the, like, Night Without Day, you're like, that's going to be an eclipse, right? And then there's, like, a point when, like, somebody, like, throws like, one of the evil guys throws a helmet, and it crashes through the stained glass, and the sun is right there. And you're like, okay, cool. That's going to be a cool shot in about 5 minutes. And then you get it. Yeah, it was so cool.
Yes, I think it's things like that, and the cinematographer, I'm going to butcher his name, is Vittorio Storaro, I believe. I think that it's moments like that. I just like, it's a gorgeous film. I
absolutely.
think, and like the plant and payoffs and stuff like that are always wonderful. But I just think that, like, the way that it was shot, right, and like even from the opening title sequence, as I was looking at it, yes, there's a hawk, and we'll get to the music, I'm sure, but I love that the opening title sequence, as it's coming in, which reminds me a lot of why they took, like, Stranger Things took certain things to make their opening title sequence, because that big block lettering was very much of the times. But as the words Ladyhawke are coming in, it actually is going from daylight, right? So you're seeing the sun. And then when the lettering comes in, it dampens the color and makes it look like the moon. So it's just this really cool way of consistently showing the difference to these lovers from night to day. Yeah, I think it's incredibly creative.
Yeah, and I love that opening. I was going to bring that up because, like, when it's just kind of like Ladyhawke coming across the screen, and you're seeing kind of like the sun turning into the moon as the letters are scrolling across, you're like, this is somehow very appropriate and medieval, but the most 80s thing I've ever seen in my life.
Right? 100%.
And honestly, that's how I feel about the whole movie, right? Yes. Like, we talk about Ferris Bueller. Broderick is doing this Ferris Bueller, but it feels like a medieval Ferris Bueller, like, and there's like all this stuff where it's like, yeah, this is like 80s as hell, but it's also just like, yeah, this is 80s as hell through that medieval kind of lens. These do feel like knights and chivalry and there's magic and stuff like that, and it's all happening. And yeah, let's you brought it up, so let's talk about the score for this, because I think that this score is one of the most 80s score, and I guess it's very much in that tradition of 80s movies where they're going a little bit away from the kind of traditional big orchestral, your John Williams scores, and it's going to something, more kind of prog rock, but they do still mix in the kind of medieval sounds that almost remind me of, like, I've been listening a lot to recently. I just discovered this band from, I think they kind of were from the 80s, but they're still around. They're Italian. It's like an orchestra with prog rock influences. Rondo Venezatio, something like that. I can't remember the name. If anybody knows, sorry. But it those vibes. But yeah, it was like the guy who did this. I guess he's like famous for working with, like, what 80s band is it? Because I have it pulled up here.
It was Wishbone Ash. Is that the one, or?
That's not what let's see. I have it because it was Andrew Powell, who he's worked with. Oh, he worked with Alan Parsons. So Alan Parsons, I guess, was kind of, yeah. So like he's somebody who like had worked a lot on like with the Alan Parsons project, and Alan Parsons produced the score, and Richard Donner, I guess, was like driving around like listening to Alan Parsons and was like, hey, like this is the vibe I want for my movie. This kind of like orchestral guys, worked with them a lot. Let's hire him. So, I know this movie gets a lot of flack for the soundtrack. And I know it's kind of a divisive issue. Where did you fall on that?
Okay. I've thought a lot about this, and what's interesting to me is, again, trying to remember the first time or the second time or the third time I've watched this movie, the score never occurred to me. And as somebody who wrote film music for a minute, I'm shocked that it never did. Looking at it now, I love the score aspect to it. I actually think the thematic music of the love story, the thematic music of Isabeau, there's just these small themes that are very intricate and intricately woven inside, the score. The drum set feels like it's a little much at times, and maybe the guitar could have gone by the wayside, I'm gonna say. It's just, there's like, I think honestly, when I was rewatching it, I was thinking, you know what, I would love to have seen this without the 80s like rock music in it, because I think that it would have played better if it hadn't had that in it. Just to be really honest, I think but I do think that it is Richard Donner's like signature. I think it is who he is. So it's hard for me to say that, because when something is from a director and it's the way that they feel about a piece, then I feel like it should stay in there. That's who he is. And seeing as how he did Goonies, a year later, and then which he had oh my God, wow, I just blanked on her name.
Yeah, Goonies, I guess, comes out the same year, actually.
Oh, that's right, because it came out in 85. Yeah. So he clearly had a love for popular music of the day. And I think that and he also has a comedic response to things, and likes and really enjoys comedy. You see it in the Goonies. Me and my husband are constantly quoting the line, God put that rock there for a purpose, and I don't think you should move it, with our kids. It's just one of those things where I think that he has this, and he did the Lethal Weapon series too, right? So comedy is part of his thing, and I don't, like you said, I know that he was listening to it while he was like location scouting. I don't know if it works all the time. That moment where Matthew Broderick is getting out of the dungeon, and then it starts this like really like funky like boom, boom, I'm just like, wait, what? Like what century are we living in? It feels a little off, but at the same time, I don't know. If you love a thing, if you really enjoy a thing, then is it really wrong, right? Like, is what were the choices that he made wrong? I mean, how do you feel about the music?
So honestly, it's okay. So it's interesting because you brought up Lethal Weapon, which obviously is another Donner film and has some very of the time music. That first one has that like Clapton like every time like Mel Gibson will like slide across a car or whatever. So, and I love Clapton. That did not necessarily work for me at all. And sometimes these scenes can feel very dated. And this one, obviously, it's very of the time. You have people like I mentioned, like you have like Giorgio Moroder, who's like very influential this time. He's got that kind of electronic synthy sound that is dominating the 80s. And honestly, for whatever reason, I kind of really dug it. I really, really thought that the score in this was fantastic. Like, I was watching it last night, and this is the first time I'd seen it. I'd been wanting to watch it for an excuse to watch it for a while. So as soon as you were like, "Hey, 80s fantasy, cheesy fantasy," I was like, "All right, let's do Ladyhawke." Like, I finally have. I can't hold it back any longer. And I was watching. I was kind of went in thinking like this will be a movie that I'll like kind of probably enjoy a little bit. Like it'll be fun to talk about. It'll be kind of like, "Hey, that movie was weird, but it was fun." And I was like, "This is legitimately great." And one of the big things about that I love was like the soundtrack. It was so just weird and like, but it fit the vibes. It's one of those things where like, yeah, sure, technically it's anachronistic, right? You would never have like sound like this. But I think like a lot of times anachronistic stuff, as long as it gets the vibe right, it works for me. And this did feel like it get that vibe right, where once again, it feels like, yeah, this is Middle Ages through that lens of the 80s, through that very synthy kind of just like funky sound that I was like, I don't know, there's something about like a night going around and it being this, and maybe it's just because that's just a genre of music that I like a lot and I don't get to hear, and I haven't really seen a lot of stuff that utilizes it like this, but for me it was so cool when it was just like doing that like weird synthy like reverbs and stuff like that, as like Rutger Hauer's like stabbing a guy through the chest or whatever. I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and I was thinking like, I don't know, how would I have felt about this if it had a more traditional kind of sweeping score done by John Williams or whoever. And I think it, like, I still would have obviously liked it, but I think it would have felt a little less unique, a little less interesting than it did. And because it does give that kind of like, hey, this is a different kind of story. This is a different kind of adventure that we are going on here. And, I've talked about, way in the past, I did an episode on A Knight's Tale. And I also dig that music is like, it's like, yeah, we have Queen music here in this movie. And
that's right.
In that one, it's like, okay, they're not literally probably like listening to Queen, but like that was like the equivalent, that's what it would have felt like for these people to listen to the music of the time. It feels like how we listened to Queen in like the 90s and early 2000s. And this one, it felt like, yeah, that's like kind of the vibes would be for these people. And I think Donner was the one who brought up an interesting point. Is like, yeah, like even if I had put in, more classical orchestral scores, that would still technically be anachronistic too, because they weren't listening to stuff like that back then. It's like,
yeah, that's true.
I always think of like when we watch like something about like ancient Rome and everybody's doing British accents because it seems more authentic. But I'm like, there wasn't like modern day British accents with like Maximus and shit like that running around, That's what like, so when people like gave Denzel shit for like, having his like normal speaking voice in Gladiator 2, I was like, yeah, but like, it's not like the other accents are like, any more accurate. So that's kind of how I felt about it.
Well, and I think too, I mean, to your point, I don't think, I mean, this is a fantasy world, right? Like it's not like we're trying to spin this off as like historical accuracy, right? We're not sitting here like saying this is going to be like everything that you knew of the Middle Ages is exactly the way that, like, that's not what we're going for. And I think A Knight's Tale is a perfect example of this idea of having music in places, newer music in places that we wouldn't necessarily associate it with. I think what's fascinating to me about it is that I constantly have to ask myself, because I'm getting to an age, I have to ask myself the question, am I feeling this way because I'm here in this place now? And would I feel this way then? I know that there were some critics and stuff who had said that they really hated the score then. But I think too, one of the great things about the 80s is that the 80s was really trying to differentiate itself from the 70s. And it was really like this space of the future. Like this is like, especially in films. And so I think that I applaud that aspect of his desire to create something, to create a new world, and then to create a sound that goes with that world. Again, I can't say it's my favorite. I think that it doesn't take me out of the story. I think it actually kind of makes me lean in, because I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
This was not, because I was thinking, because you get into this medieval vibe, and then like he falls in this water. I have to mention the sound effects are also a little crazy. I feel like they're a little $6 million man-ish. Like
there is a little bit of that. Like when she's falling off the tower and she's like screaming, like really screaming, and then it turns into like the hawk, like and you're like, oh, okay, I get what you're going for there, but like it's a little. It was a lot. And then I was like, or even like when they would jump, you would hear this June, like kind of sound like. There was a moment when, like, in super slow motion at the end, where like Rutger Hauer is like fighting a dude, and he like rolls over. It's like, and I'm like, what is happening right now? This is some 80s shit. Really, really, yeah. So this is clearly a movie made for $20 million in the 80s at some point. But that does give it that charm, Yes. And yeah, this is a movie that I feel like, I don't even know that it's like whatever one level below like cult classic is, because this is a movie that like I feel like people kind of talk about every once in a while. It's like one of those. There's a lot of these movies like from the 80s or the surrounding time period where it's like, yeah, it's this movie that came out and then it didn't really do super well, but like. It's either gone on to become incredibly popular, like The Princess Bride, or it's got like a really devoted fan base, like Legend or something, where people talk about it and like, oh yeah, this is this great movie from, and like one level below that, I feel like is Ladyhawke, where it's like, oh yeah, that movie where Michelle Pfeiffer is like a hawk and Rutger Hauer's there, and yeah, like people, and to the point where like I felt like this is like could have been like a classic that I grew up with, because so many of these like 80s movies like The Princess Bride and stuff like that, my parents showed me, I was, I grew up in the 90s, so I got a lot of that, like, oh, this is a movie from a couple years ago, it's starting to get reclaimed, and now we're watching it, and, this one, I never had that experience with. I feel like a lot of people didn't, but I was like, oh, I could have, like, it could have been this, like, it felt like I was watching, I was like, I feel like I already have nostalgia for this movie, despite having never seen it before.
I think it is. I think that it is because it's so uniquely of that time, right? Like I always love, every Halloween I go back and I rewatch Night of the Living Dead, the 1970, 6, I always forget, but like the black and white Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead. I think that there's so much that it's like eating comfort food, right?
Yeah.
It's something that somebody made that I know that they were passionate about making, and that they're excited about, and that they enjoy, right? They enjoyed the craft of what they were trying to do. And so it's like full of calories and deliciousness and everything that I would crave in something. I feel like that's the way that I feel about movies like this, where again, the storytelling is very straightforward. Even at a certain point when I was watching it, my mom was here and I asked her, I said, what is Ladyhawke's name? And she's like, I don't know. They always call her Ladyhawke. And I'm like, wait, what? And then like, after we like, and she's seen it like a million times and recently. And I was just like, she's like, oh, no, it's Isabeau. And I was like, oh, okay. Cause it's the things that we remember and just, again, the simplicity of the storytelling, which is a beautiful thing. I think that it's so clear and so to the point. And then it's surrounded by all this beautiful, the shots are gorgeous. The costumes are fun. The sword play is exciting. I think that it's just that comfort food of film that the second that you start watching it, that's what you feel, right? Like you're feeling all of the emotions and all of the things that all those people put into it. And it is of a time, right? Because comfort food to every individual is comforting because it was something of a time that they get to relive through that food. And so I feel that same way. These are, Ladyhawke is a comfort movie, right? Where like you go and you're in that time. I mean, I feel the same way about I was recently watching The Breakfast Club, and some of the dance moves when they're dancing around that library, I'm just like, whoa, those are not great moves, guys. It's just but again, I can sit here and I can enjoy that because it is comforting to me. It's a moment in time. Even if I didn't even watch it then, it's so of a time. And that's a really cool thing to have.
I feel like really holds up because there's some movies from the same time period, and you might be mad at me for this. Listeners might be mad, but like I didn't watch Goonies till later in life, and I was kind of like, what is this? I was kind of like, what is happening? Like, and it's the same because I get it. I watched Hook. I'm the age where I watch Hook at a very early age, and I'm like, what? And I'm like, I don't know if I could watch that objectively. Like, that's a movie from my childhood, and I'm like, and it's got better, and so I'm like, I get it. I get why people don't like it, but for me, like, I have that nostalgic feeling, and it's like I don't have that same nostalgic feeling for like the Goonies, so that one might not work as well for me. But this one, I was like, so I was a little nervous going into this one. I was like, okay, I don't have the nostalgia. Is it going to capture me? But it totally did, and I was like, it was one of those moments. It's like, thank God, this movie fucking rules, because I was like having a real blast. And Donner's somebody who, some of his stuff, like it really, like not everything works, but some of his stuff really works for me. And this is definitely one of my favorite films of his, for sure.
Yeah, I think that, like, I mean, I love Michelle Pfeiffer. I've always loved her ever since she was Catwoman. I think that I fell in love with her. I think that she's absolutely incredible. Then What Lies Beneath sealed the deal. And I got to be honest, I'm in love with her in Grease 2. I don't care who knows it. I don't care that my husband thinks I am weird for loving Grease 2. I will love her in Grease 2 till the day I die. But I just think, and then of course, Matthew Broderick is just incredible. It was really interesting to me because even looking at the actors and just kind of wondering where they stand in my mind, Rutger Hauer to me was the wild card in the sense that the only thing that my mind could remember of him besides this movie is Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh, okay, yeah, the original movie.
The original movie. And I was just like, all I can picture him is like a scene where he's walking down the hall, like at the school after Buffy. And like, and the way he like flexes and the inflections in his mouth. And so it's very interesting to me because I see him as these two different characters and like, that's it.
Interesting.
That's all I see. So, but I think that I think it's, I don't know. I think the actors and like we said, the setting where it takes place in actual legitimate castles. Like, I think it's a pretty incredible movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the actors because I was really blown away by particularly the three main performances. We talked about Broderick a lot already, and how he's basically doing proto-Ferris Bueller, but like Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer are so good in this. And
yes,
as you alluded to earlier, it's amazing that despite them not sharing any scenes until the very last chunk of the movie, you believe that they are in love. Like, that is some real impressive acting. And you get it, like, when everybody's just kind of like, oh, yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer, like, Isabeau, like everybody's in love with her, like even Matthew Broderick's like, yeah, dude, I get it, she's hot, it's like, yeah, it's 80s Michelle Pfeiffer, like she looks good in Ant-Man 3, and that movie came out like 2 years ago. This is like Michelle Pfeiffer in the 80s. You're just like, holy shit, she is incredible, and she's also like so good, and like she's like this ethereal, just kind of like she'll just say it, but you also like believe like yeah, she's a hawk. I get it, she's killing it, and then so she's just so good in this, and I love that moment at the end where the priest won't even look at her. He can't. Yeah. He's like I'm evil. I'm in love with her. I can't look at you. She's so good, and then Rutger Hauer in this, you brought up how much you love him in Buffy. Like was always one of my favorite actors. He kind of had like this little mini resurgence as like a character like in like 2005 or so, where he was like in Batman Begins in Sin City as just like I would just think of like Morgan Freeman being like, "Didn't you get the memo?" Like to him, that's like the scene that. But then of course, I think his most memorable role and one of the greatest roles of all time is him as Roy Batty just a couple years before this in Blade Runner. That is, right. His Tears in the Rain thing, which he apparently like ad-libbed. Like he was just like, Ridley, what is this shit that's on the page? I'm just gonna say some shit, and he just goes off and gives one of the greatest movie speeches of all time. And yeah, I think Hauer is so good in this because he has this real, like, you believe, this dude is a medieval knight who turns into a wolf at night. Yeah. He's got kind of like nobility, but like this anger to him at the same time, where it's like you get why she's in love with him and why he's like, but he's on this like righteous mission. He talks at like his father's sword and like the interesting symbolism with all that. And I read that there was initially, I guess it was going to be Kurt Russell who would have been in this. I think he would have been good. Like, don't get me wrong, Kurt Russell is one of our great actors. I think he would have done a great job. But I think he like Howard just brings this other presence to it where like I don't think he would have been great as if he was the focus of it, but as this kind of like side like he's mysterious, like you're kind of like you don't know, like Matthew Broderick's like, what's going on with this guy, what's this guy's deal? He has this air to him and this real seriousness that I don't think a lot of actors could, like, even Kurt Russell is like, he's really good, but like a lot of times he's kind of like more jokey. He's a little bit closer to, I feel like, what Matthew Broderick brought to the role. Yeah. Whereas like Hauer has just this aura about him in this film that I was really impressed. Did you have any other thoughts on any of the performances in this movie?
Well, yeah, I think that Hauer's performance in particular is interesting to me because we hear more from him than we do Michelle Pfeiffer's character, right? Mm-hmm. Especially the first half of the film when we get a lot of Matthew Broderick, but then when we get Hauer, like we only get him really and Matthew Broderick. I mean, I think Michelle Pfeiffer, when she first shows up, she says like 3 words, like "this is a dream" or something like that.
Yeah.
And then she's a hawk again, right? Like, so I think that one of the things that I love about Hauer's performance is that he does have this stoicism to him, that he's trying to protect her. Mm-hmm. He's trying to protect himself until he can walk these steps and finish this. And there's no, again, story-wise, we get no history besides that he was the head of the guard and then he fell in love and then this happened to him and then they went away somewhere, we don't know where, and then they came back specifically so that he can kill this man. That's why he's here. And so to have Howard's character, I think, plays that really well. And Kurt Russell is a great actor, an amazing actor. I don't think he was right for this. And I think that, like you said, he's so much closer to Matthew Broderick. But I think that one of the things that Hauer brings is this sense of duty that I can't see Kurt Russell. It's a very, which is, I'm going to say something because I think it's interesting. As a medieval fantasy film with, I believe, 0 British accents in it whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
It still has that air that Brits tend to give because of their accents to a lot of, it has that air of duty. I think there's a different American idea of duty that can be played out, and I think Kurt Russell can play that really well. I think in it, you sense that from him, where he has an idea of what he needs to do. I think that Hauer plays it in a different way, where it is like when he's describing his father's sword. There is something very powerful about his performance. And like I said, I always love Michelle Pfeiffer because I want to dive directly into her eyeballs because they're so stinking
Yeah.
blue. And here, especially the way this is shot, I'm like, are her eyes like twice the size of a normal human being?
Right.
I'm just like, they feel, I mean, I know that they do that for Howard when he's turning into a wolf.
Mhm.
That one moment that they are almost like, you're just like, oh, they're going to see each other. And, you know, they don't
Yeah.
get to. Like her eyes are just magical, to say the least. So,
and they even
the
put
short
that in the
hair.
script. Like, they're like, oh, like, she has piercing blue eyes, like a hawk's eyes. And you're like, okay, good for you. That's good casting right there. Yeah, no, I'm such a huge fan of hers. Like, I also, you mentioned Batman.
Mhm.
That was also one of my favorite movies. That was my introduction to her, and I just love a good kind of like lovers, who can't be together loves. And Batman Returns has some of that same stuff in it, like one of my favorite scenes from any superhero movie is the scene where they're beneath the mistletoe and they figure out who each other are. And yeah, this scene, the movie where they're like,
could be deadly.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
All right, here we go.
New Phineas and Ferb is here.
We're back, baby.
For 104 more days
I know what we're gonna do today.
of summer vacation.
I am ready for summer shenanigans. Let's do it. Oh, yeah.
All right! We're gonna bust Phineas and Ferb once and for all!
Are we gonna do this again?
New inventions, shenanigans, innators, adventures, and songs.
Brand new summer vacation!
New Phineas and Ferb starts June 5th on Disney Channel and next day on Disney Plus on DisneyPlus.Disney.com.
If you eat it.
like, this could be even deadlier if you meet it. Like, such a good, and then they like look at it. It's so good. It's so good. But yeah, there's just so much of that good. Howard just brings that. It's like a sense of chivalry,
Yes.
to the movie. And Michelle Pfeiffer is never like a damsel in distress necessarily, but she feels like this classic medieval maiden throughout the whole movie. And as you talked about, like I love how much you loved stories where people turn to animals and stuff like that. I kind of jokingly threw out Animorphs. Animorphs for me, I'm in the exact right age where like I was reading that shit at like an early age and being like, this is the greatest thing. Because like, as a kid, you're like, oh cool, like the kids turning animals, but it's also like, this is about the horrors of war and like the indoctrination of children. And you're like, also, there's a kid who's stuck as a red-tailed hawk. And so this I was watching, I was like, hey, red-tailed hawk, just like Tobias. So I was nerding out about that for sure. But yeah, honestly, I'm so glad we got to talk about this.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about Ladyhawke?
Well, now you have me thinking about Michelle Pfeiffer and how she's constantly playing these roles where she can't be with the person that she loves for whatever reason. Because she's that way in Grease too. She can't be with the Knight Rider because she's a pink lady and he's not. And it's very interesting. Like now I want to go research her career a little bit more and be like is this something that she like does?
Right, even in Ant-Man, she's like in the quantum realm while like her husband is in the real world or whatever.
Michelle Pfeiffer, what is going on? What is happening? No, I think that my hope is that more people watch movies like this. I think that one of my loves for fantasy is that we get the breadth of fantasy. And I think that, I know that studios have this idea of what they want to put out, but I think that as an independent filmmaker myself, I think that people have some really great ideas out there, and it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be Game of Thrones. Everything does not have to be Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is its own thing. Lord of the Rings is its own thing. I love both of those things. But I think that Ladyhawke sits on this pedestal because I think that the storytelling is so beautiful and so unique and so clear-minded in its vision. And so, yeah, I think everybody should watch it and have fun.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And The good thing about some of these, movies that are from years past that might have been kind of forgotten, overlooked, a lot of times, sometimes they will unfortunately disappear. They're hard to track down, but sometimes they are actually easier to find. And this one is one that has found its way, because I guess the rights are probably cheaper or whatever, onto a few different free streaming services. Like, it's on Plex. I watched it on Hoopla. I highly recommend Hoopla to, if you have a library card, a lot of libraries will allow you to get movies for free on Hoopla. And then, of course, it's on Tubi. So after you guys watch Queendom Come, go check out Ladyhawke.
Check out Ladyhawke. That's right.
So yeah, I mean, it is nice that we are, because 10, 20 years ago, this might be a harder one to track down. And there's some things I don't love about streaming, but there's also some things where it's like, yeah, I could just go boot up my TV. Like, it's, I don't have to go find the DVD, go to the library, whatever. I could just boot up my Fire Stick or whatever and just watch the movie. And it's free to stream. I might have to watch some ads or something, or I don't. If I watch it on Hoopla, that's what's, get a library card, get Hoopla. I can't say that enough. But yeah, like, it's really cool that this stuff is becoming more widely available.
Absolutely. And I think it is really nice that, again, like you said, there's some things that I'm not in love with streaming, but it is nice that these things get to a resurgence. They get to come out and people get to experience them again and experience different storytelling. Because I do think that it's very different from, by the time we hit the 90s and you're getting things like Robin Hood Men in Tights or Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, or, you're getting into a whole different, which moves you into where Lord of the Rings is and, now where we are today. But I think it's just such a different way of telling a story, and it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, I'm glad that people can hop on Tubi and go and watch Queendom Come. They can go and watch Ladyhawke. They can experience, again, the breadth that fantasy holds, because there's just so many different varieties of fantasy. It's not all just one thing. So
yeah, absolutely. And I love all different kinds of fantasy, whether it's, traditional or something new, remixing and all these different things. So I'm always a really big fan of that. But yeah, with that said, talking about Tubi and about different kinds of fantasy, before we get out of here, I wanted to give you one last time to shout out Queendom Come, let the people know what it's about. Obviously, they can watch it on Tubi now. What did you want to let the people know about Queendom Come?
Yeah, Queendom Come is a fantasy series. It surrounds Soraya, a young woman who finds out that she has these magical powers and has to figure out what to do with them. We wanted to create something that was easy to shoot because budgets are hard, but we also wanted to create something that was the beginning of something. We wanted to create a story that could move forward into various spaces. And so, yeah, it's the beginning of her story, and we would love for everyone to come check it out on Tubi now. But yeah, come and check it out, because I do want to say, if I could, that everybody who worked on Queendom Come is equity. And so for every view that everybody watches, our whole cast and crew get paid. So it's not something where we paid some people and we didn't pay others. No, this is a company-wide situation that me and my husband are working tirelessly on to create equity within filmmaking, so that the people who work on the projects get paid for those projects equally.
Yeah, that is really awesome. So something I will definitely be checking out. I encourage everyone listening to please check that out. And then after you're done, with your Tubi binge of Ladyhawke and Queendom Come, if you're looking to listen to some more podcasts, I encourage you to check out the back catalog here on Underrated. I've got over 160 episodes of good stuff. I would love anybody to listen. Especially if this is your first time. If you want to throw a subscribe, if you can rate us 5 stars. This is also an independent podcast, and that kind of stuff really helps a lot. I also, as I mentioned, I do a couple other podcast things, including the Midnight Film Society, which it comes out with me and my friend Damien, talk about kind of more recently released stuff. And then I have a Patreon for this podcast as well. Just go to patreon.com/underratedmoviepodcast. I call that Underrated Disc 2. There's 3 levels. You can do the DVD level at $1, the Blu-ray level at $3, or the 4K level at $5, and there's all kinds of different benefits for each level. Everybody gets episodes of this podcast a week early and ad-free if you sign up at all. If you're at at least $3, you get a whole bonus podcast called Across the Second Dimension, where I talk about films that were originally released in 2D and see how they hold up in 3D, and all kinds of other fun stuff that I'm doing over there. But yeah, just follow Underrated Movie Podcast on all the socials if you want to check us out, or just go to underratedmoviepodcast.com for information on all that stuff. But Sarah, one more time, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this really fantastic movie with me.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, everybody go check out the podcast. Underrated is incredible. I have listened to a dozen or so of them so far. I am hooked, line and sinker. And I have to say, I love the Page Master episode. This is one of my favorites. But thank you so much for having me on. It was a blast.
Of course. Awesome. Thank you. And I'll see you guys all next time.